Folks, I want to just take a few minutes. And what I want to share with us this morning is my very strong foundational belief that when it comes to making changes in the world that need to be made, none of us is powerless. None of us should ever believe that we don't have what it takes, that we don't have the strength, that we don't have the insight to start to move things in the right direction. And I want to begin my few moments of reflection by sharing a story with you about my grandmother. We called her Rabbi. She lived with my family when I was a young child. And first of all, one of my biggest memories about her was that she always defended me when my parents were angry with me. So I would always run to her first, and then somehow things turned out a little bit more favorably for me. She was very Jewishly committed. She loved to come to synagogue. And my mother told the story, I don't remember it firsthand, but she said that there was a Shabbat when at the Kiddush after the service, a few of the people at my Bobby's table were saying things about the rabbi that were not so positive. And one of them said, the rabbi isn't friendly to me. And somebody else said, yeah, I don't think he's friendly to me either. And my Bubby said, he's not unfriendly. I think he's just a little bit shy. And when she said that, which was a reflection of her own perception, the tone at the table shifted. People took a step back, and instead of launching those negative comments, they started to be more reflective and a little bit more forgiving. I want to talk this morning about Ruach. Ruach is spirit, but it's important to have the kind of spirit which makes things move differently. Ruach isn't just spirit. It also, the Hebrew word means wind. We can get the wind to flow a little bit differently if we are thoughtful and courageous. This may have seemed like such a small thing, a few people talking about an individual, but for my grandmother, it wasn't a small thing. And she helped with her ruach to make the wind blow just a little bit differently. We read this morning, and Idan spoke so articulately about how two individuals stepped forward. The Torah says that they, according to God, had ruach acheret. Caleb and Joshua had a different spirit. They introduced a different spirit, not one that was filled with dread and anxiety, but one that was filled with a sense of opportunity and hope. And initially, they did not make a difference, but gradually over time, they introduced something which actually caused the wind to blow differently. The next generation would face Eretz Yisrael, the land of promise, with a different kind of an inspiration and a real sense that they could get things done. So I want us to take a step back and reflect on all of the times that people introduced Ruach Acheret, a different spirit. Our ancestors were enslaved for hundreds of years. The daughter of Pharaoh, the sister of Moses, Moses himself are each going to introduce a different spirit that will cause ultimately for that story to end differently than it would have. Our ancestors would still be in Egypt if these people hadn't stepped forward. There is a wonderful story about the individual who is responsible for Hebrew becoming the spoken language in Israel. His name was Eliezer ben Yehuda. And when he first decided that this ancient holy language would be the language that would be spoken by the farmers and by people in the markets, that it would become the public, normal spoken language, he got so much pushback People said you cannot take the holy language and make it the language that is spoken in the market and in the square. And people cursed him. And they even desecrated his grave. Now, here is the interesting part of the story. In what language did they desecrate his grave? Decades after he passed away, in Hebrew, which means that he ultimately prevailed. Because even the people who cursed him for making Hebrew the national language of Medinat Yisrael were using Hebrew. It's an interesting irony. And what happened was, because he had Ruach Acheret, because he saw things a little bit differently, he was able to cause the wind to blow in such a way that Israel became the spoken language, not just the holy language, but the language that would be used each and every day. I want us to think about all of the examples that might occur to us of people who had the inspiration and the courage to introduce a different spirit. In Iran today, you're reading about this. There is a shift that is taking place because of courageous people, women and men who are speaking out and acting out. And the government doesn't quite know what to do about it because it's reached a tipping point. And so they are struggling to figure out how to respond. They are still tragically responding in ways that are barbaric and horrific, but even they are realizing that something is changing. And we can think during the month of June of people who introduced Ruach Acheret when it had to do with all kinds of issues, racial related, gender related, sexuality related. Whatever the issues are, those people who saw that things should be different were able to introduce a different Ruach. I also want us to think this year, celebrating Israel's 75th birthday, of those people who courageously said that there should be a Jewish state in the world, just like there are other nations that are connected with other religious traditions, and they did not pull back. So my invitation to all of us is to think about ourselves. We may say, I'm not as courageous as this one, and I don't have the insight of that one. Each of us has an opportunity. We can do it at the Shabbat table when the conversation goes in a direction that we know isn't right. We can do it in the boardroom at our businesses when things are going in a direction that we believe isn't worthy of the institution. We can do it at a heated school meeting when we know that things are being said that just don't express who we should be. We can access Ruach Acheret, a different spirit. So I am inviting us this week, in honor and in memory of Caleb and Joshua and all of the people throughout history, and if I may humbly add, my own grandmother, to realize that our Ruach, our spirit, is worthy, it can be powerful, and we can move things from here to there if only we can access that courage. May we find that strength within us to bring our Ruach, our spirit, to bear. Amen.